One of the most dangerous and ruthless villains in The Lord of the Rings is the Witch King of Angmar. Though the movies portrayed him very closely to the source material, they were still far from giving the character justice. He is actually more important and is responsible for why many things are the way they are. The Witch King also has a rich backstory, dating all the way back to the Second Age of Middle-earth. In this video I will tell his full story, from his birth all the way to his death. Born sometime between 1697 and 2251 of the Second Age, the man who would later be known as the Witch King likely lived in Numenor, the great island kingdom of that age. Little is known about his early life, but we can be sure that he did rise to some important position among his people, either a lord or a captain. In his youth he likely had blonde hair and blue eyes, like many Numenorians. As this man grew older, a fear of death began to take hold of him. For him, death meant the separation from all the ones he loved and all his treasures forever. One day, the man was approached by the Dark Lord Sauron, who offered him a way to escape death. He gave him a ring of power, which would both prolong his life and make him mightier. In exchange, the man must pledge his allegiance to Sauron. This the man accepted, and with the ring, his power became greater and his life was prolonged far beyond the years of an ordinary man. However, as more and more centuries passed on, the man's body deteriorated to the point where he could no longer move and his life became unbearable. Soon, his bodily form faded away and he became a wraith. Because of his one ring, Sauron was able to enslave him and make him one of the Nazgûl, the 9 men who accepted his rings. The former Numenorian became the chief of the 9. The Nazgûl are first seen by the Free Peoples in the year 2251 of the Second Age, and quickly became known as Sauron's greatest servants. For the following 1000 years, Sauron ruled much of Middle-earth with an iron fist. Finally, in 3433, the Free Peoples all came together to form the last alliance of elves and men, in an effort to bring down Sauron. The alliance marched on Mordor and waged a 12-year war. It is likely that as Sauron's second-in-command, the Witch King played a big role in this war. In the end, Sauron was defeated, and his ruling ring was taken from him by Isildur. With their master's seeming death, his servants dispersed and went into hiding. The Nazgûl traveled to the east, patiently awaiting their master's return. Because the One Ring had not been destroyed, Sauron did survive his defeat and was able to slowly regain his corporeal form. In 1050 of the Third Age, Sauron returns to Middle-earth, taking residence in the abandoned fortress of Dol Guldur, and begins to plot vengeance against those who had defeated him. At this point, the elves are diminished and many of them fled west over the sea. The dwarfs have isolated themselves in their mountains. This leaves Sauron's strongest foes as men, chiefly the Dúnedain, the descendants of Numenor. The Dúnedain had two great realms, Gondor and Arnor. Because Gondor had just reached the height of its power, Sauron knew that the kingdom was too strong to attempt to assail yet. Thus, he gave the Witch King a new task, the destruction of Arnor. The Lord of the Nazgûl arrives in Eriador in 1300 and quickly establishes his power base in Angmar, a cold land just north of Arnor. In Angmar dwelt a race of wild men as well as orcs from the Misty Mountains. They quickly fell under the Witch King's dominion and take him as their leader. At the end of the mountains of Angmar, the Witch King builds the fortress of Carn Dûm, from where he would rule his new kingdom. With an army of orcs and men under his command, the Witch King now turns his attention to Arnor. Because of a civil war and disputes between one of the kings and his brothers, the kingdom was divided in three: Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rhudaur. Rhudaur was the weakest out of the petty realms, and the closest to Angmar. Through his spies, the Witch King learned that there were few Dúnedain in Rhudaur, and that the main population was comprised of hillmen, who were secretly hostile to Arnor. He forms an alliance with one of these hillmen lords, and with his aid, the hillmen take control of Rhudaur and kill all the Dúnedain that remained there. With the hillmen pledging their allegiance to him, the Witch King attacks Arthedain and Cardolan. In 1409 his armies encircle and destroy the watchtower of Amon Sul. With the fortress destroyed, the Witch King invades and devastates Cardolan, and prepares for a siege on Fornast, Arthedain's capital. In this war both King Arveleg I of Arthedain and the last prince of Cardolan are killed. Just as it seems that the Witch King's victory was assured, an army of elves from Lindon and one from Rivendell arrives, turning the tide of the battle and driving Angmar's forces back. After this, the elves attack Angmar itself, but are unable to fully destroy it. For the following 500 years, the Witch King remains in Carn Dûm, slowly rebuilding his army for a final attack on Arnor. In 1636, a great plague from the south kills all the Dunedain that still remain in Cardolan, ending the kingdom. To add insult to injury, the Witch King sends evil spirits to the Barrow Downs, where the Dunedain had taken refuge. There they reanimate the corpses of the dead, and would become known as the Barrow-wights. Finally, in 1974, the forces of Angmar attack Fornas during a harsh winter. The city falls, and the Dunedain are forced to flee to the elven realm of Lindon. King Arvedui of Arthedain was separated from his people, and forced to flee to the north. Upon finding this out, the elves send a ship to rescue the king. The ship finds Arvedui, but as it is returning home, it is caught in a storm, and Arvedui and all the elves drown. It is likely that the Witch King was responsible for this storm, as he did have some power over the weather. With Arnor no more, the Witch King sets up his seat of power in Fornost and defies the ancient fortress, but his victory would be short-lived. Before the attack, Arvedui had sent messengers to Gondor, begging for help. The Gondorians sent a fleet of ships commanded by Earnur, the king's only son and heir. When the fleet arrived in Lindon, Arvedui was dead and Arthedain had fallen. Still, the men of Gondor, elves of Lindon, and remnants of Arnor came together and marched on Fornas, intending to end the Witch King's rule. It is said that the hobbits of the Shire also sent a company of archers to aid the men and elves. Because of his pride, the Witch King did not prepare for a siege on Fornost, and instead sent his armies into the plain. This proved a great mistake. As the men of Arnor and elves attacked from the west, the cavalry of Gondor swooped from the north, outflanking their enemies. Seeing his defeat was inevitable, the Witch King gathered what forces he could and attempted to return to Angmar. On his way he was intercepted by the Gondorian cavalry, with Earnur at his head. The Witch King charged Earnur, and the prince's horse became afraid and ran wildly. The Witch King laughed at this, but suddenly a force of elves from Rivendell ambushed him. Leading the elves was Glorfindel, a former lord of Gondolin and one of the most powerful elves in Middle-earth. At Glorfindel's coming, the Witch King fled into the night. Earnur wanted to pursue him, but Glorfindel stopped him by saying, "He will not return to this land. Far off yet is his doom, and not by the hand of man will he fall." Following this defeat, there remained no orc or man in Angmar. Deeming its purpose achieved, the Witch King abandoned the north. In 1980, he arrived in Mordor and gathered the rest of the Nazgûl, making preparations for their master's return. In 2000, the Nazgûl attacked the Gondorian city of Minas Ithil. After 2 years, the city falls and is renamed Minas Morgul, the chief dwelling of the Witch King. 41 years later, Earnur becomes king of Gondor after his father's death. The Witch King challenges him to single combat, reminding him of his disgrace in the north. Steward Mardil Voronwe was at first able to restrain Earnur, but upon being challenged again just a few years later, the king accepts. He rides forth to Minas Morgul with a small company of knights. In front of the gate of the dead city, he encounters the Witch King and realizes this was a trap. Earnur's company is ambushed, and he is captured and brought into the city. What truly happened to him is unknown, but no elf or man ever saw him again. With him having no children, the line of kings was broken. The house of the Stewards came to rule Gondor till the king returned. Through his actions, the Witch King had destroyed one Dunedain realm and left the other one without a king. For the following centuries, he continued to rule Minas Morgul, coordinating multiple invasions of Gondor. He received many titles such as the Black Captain, the Morgul Lord, and the Lord of Minas Morgul. Finally, in 2941, Sauron returns to Mordor and begins preparations for a new war. In 1370, he captures the creature Gollum and finds out that his lost ring is in the hands of a hobbit named Baggins of the Shire. With this news, he sends the Nazgul away to find the ruling ring. On June 20th, 1380, the Witch King leads a host of orcs alongside Easterlings and Haradrim in an attack against the city of Osgiliath. It is said that the men of Gondor were paralyzed by fear at the coming of the Witch King. The eastern half of Osgiliath is quickly captured. During the battle, the Nazgûl are able to cross the Anduin before the last bridge was destroyed, preventing the orcs from passing into western Osgiliath. Uncloaked and invisible, they pass north, where they receive horses and cloaks. The first part of the hunt for the ring is a disaster for the Morgul Lord. For 3 months they search through the vales of Anduin, but find nothing. In September, they go to Isengard in order to receive help from Saruman, who had just betrayed the Free Peoples. Saruman lies to the Witch King, saying that he has no knowledge of the Shire. On that very day, the Nazgûl capture one of Saruman's men and finally discover the location of the Shire. As they reach the southern borders of the Shire, they find the borders guarded by the Dunedain Rangers of the North, the descendants of the men of Arnor. After driving them off, the Witch King sends 3 ringwraiths into the Shire, whilst he and the remaining 5 encamp near the Barrow Downs and stir many wights. Unknown to the Witch King, he had arrived too late, as the ring had already left the Shire, carried by Frodo Baggins. For the following weeks, the Nazgûl hunt for the ring across Eriador. The Witch King encounters Gandalf the Grey, who pursues him. Finally, on Weathertop, the ruins of Amon-Sul, where he had defeated the Dunedain over 600 years ago, he and the other 8 Nazgûl turn and attack Gandalf. The wizard manages to escape, with some of the Nazgûl pursuing him, but the Witch King and 4 others remain on Weathertop. The following night they ambush the ring-bearer and his companions, and the Witch King wounds Frodo with a Morgul knife before being driven back by Aragorn, a descendant of the kings of Arthedain. He is sure that Frodo will succumb to the spells of the knife and turn into a wraith, but the ring-bearer manages to resist for a while and get very close to Rivendell. The Witch King also learned that Glorfindel, who he had not seen since the Battle of Fornast, had encountered Frodo's company and was guiding them. In a last desperate attempt to reclaim the ring, the Nazgûl attack Frodo at the ford of Bruinen, just west of Rivendell. They nearly capture him, but Elrond and Gandalf unleash a flood of water, which sweeps the Witch King and his companions away south. The hunt for the ring has failed. Taking the one horse that survived the flood, the Black Captain arrives in Mordor in December and sends aid to the other 8. In Minas Morgul, he gathers a great army of orcs and trolls for an invasion of Minas Tirith, Gondor's capital. On March 10th, the signal for attack is given. As he passes the gate of the Dead City, the Morgul Lord stops suddenly, as if feeling something. This was because Frodo and the ring were hiding just a few meters away. With his army reinforced by Easterlings, Haradrim, and Variags, the Witch King attacks the western half of Osgiliath, which quickly falls. As he pushes to the fields of Pelennor and encircles Minas Tirith, the siege begins. Large towers mounted by trolls and thousands of orcs are thrown against the walls, but the Gondorians resist. Finally, the Witch King unleashes Grond, a huge battering ram, which breaks the main gate with help from his spells. The Witch King passes into Minas Tirith, where he is again confronted by Gandalf. The Black Rider flung back his hood, and behold, he had the kingly crown, and yet upon no head visible was it set. The red fires shone between it, and the mantled shoulder was waste and dark. For a mouth unseen there came a deadly laughter. Old fool, this is my hour. Do you not know death when you see it? Die now and curse in vain. And with that he lifted his high sword, and flames ran down the blade. Just as it seemed that a duel was inevitable, horses are heard in the distance. The riders of Rohan had come to the aid of their ally. The Witch King flees the gate and mounts a fell beast, attacking the Rohirrim. In the battle, he ambushes King Theoden of Rohan, and the king's horse collapses because of a dart, and Theoden is crushed beneath it. All the knights of the king flee in terror at the Witch King's coming, except for one, Durnhelm. He alone refuses to abandon Theoden and challenges the Black Captain. The Witch King reveals that no man can kill him, reminding of Glorfindel's prophecy. But Durnhelm reveals that he is no man and is in fact Eowyn, the niece of Theoden. At first, the Witch King is shocked, and for the first time, this being who killed thousands is afraid. But hate overpowers him. The Witch King unleashes his fell beast on her, but the creature is quickly slain. Then he attacks himself, and with a hit from his mace, he breaks Eowyn's shield and arm. As he prepares himself for a killing blow, he is suddenly stabbed through the back by the hobbit Merry with a barrow blade, a weapon forged by the men of Cardolan against him. The Witch King collapses in pain, and Eowyn quickly stabs him through the head, breaking all the spells that kept him alive. With a cry, the Witch King, the Lord of the Nazgul, the destroyer of Arnor, ender of the kings of Gondor, falls to the field, dead. His soul leaves Arda and travels to Ilúvatar, the father of elves and men, where he would remain. It's possible that the Witch King did fight in the last battle, the Dagor Dagorath, where the world would be broken and remade, but on which side we can only guess. That was the life of the Witch King, from his past in Numenor to his rule in Angmar, all the way to his downfall at the hand of a woman and a hobbit.